From Godfather 2 to Garfield 2. Let's talk us some cinema, because I gotta use this film degree somehow. Mainstream storytelling depends on the idea of the power fantasy. Most media does. Brawn, beauty, brains, our culture seems in vital need of idols, and loves to worship talent. In this video, when I discuss characters or stars, I don't mean stars, I don't mean real people, I'm talking about star images. The image and symbology of an icon. This can be seen from the way we frame our celebrities, to the way we play our games. Peddle escapism and make our blockbusters. What are the stories that we like to tell? Well, they're predominantly action. Hollywood has always been an exceedingly masculine form of storytelling. And in a traditional contest of wills narrative, therein lies the power fantasy. Giving an audience absolute satisfaction by distilling everything they could hope to be into one caricature. Why am I explaining power fantasy? The clue's in the name. You know what a power fantasy is. The ultimate power fantasy, the oldest, are the gods. The pantheon, you may say. And the modern successor to the gods are superheroes. The modern MCU definition of a superhero are celebrity demigods straight out of ancient mythology. It's important to remember that before the edgy totalitarian themes and post 9/11 influence were applied to him, Superman's original appeal was that he was a flying man who could lift cars. A textbook power fantasy for younger kids to say, "I'm not going to bed yet, Mum!" But at some point, the superhero genre matured. It developed its ideas and entered the mainstream, becoming the most important and expensive films being made right now. Like, genre fads come and go, but caped Wonder Boys have essentially replaced the action stars of the 1990s. These are the new action blockbusters. It's hard to make a film about a man with a gun these days, because it's no longer as accessible. And just like the cowboy western, I think our society's choice in hero will be very, very revealing in the future, looking back. Armored billionaires and extraterrestrial gods are merely the current cultural archetype that replaced the Rambos and the strangers that came before it. The superhero genre has found a way to empower both kids and adults. Batman and the Avengers have become the modern day values, our definitions of strength. There is only one reason that things become big. Because they are relevant. Because they appeal to what a culture wants at the time, whether they know it or not. This is because this media has a sole goal to empower the viewer. America is a country fixated on the gun. The gun is a part of their heritage and history. It's an embedded icon and part of their identity. It's in the amendment. People will fight and die over their guns. This rhetoric of good guy with a gun most likely comes from Americana media, where there is always a mysterious stranger with a perfect aim. So it's no surprise to see that their idea of power is a man really good with a gun. But more than that, it's a man, an American, who will take action. Like one good guy with a gun battling 50 other guys, bad guys with guns. This is because the American dream, deep down for every gun-toting American, is Die Hard. John McClane is the American dream. John McClane should run for president. Bruce Willis is as important as Jesus. That was a weird tangent. So it's no wonder to see how the stars in the 90s, the action heroes like the Stallones, the Schwarzeneggers, the Keanu Reeves, came to popularity. They might not have worn capes, but they had everything but. These were superhuman demigods, incapable of being hurt. One guy with a gun, 100 guy with a gun, not one scrape. You show 'em, Arnie. Because back in these 90s action films, heroes did not get hurt. Rambo and Demolition Man were so cocky they could finish it with a pun. Then you've got Total Recall and Commando, and Schwarzenegger doesn't even understand what bullets are. Which paved the way for films like Matrix, which pioneered new ways for the character not to get hurt. Keanu Reeves can do anything with CGI. As a whole, this brand of action hero did not get scratched. Never mind killed. I think John McClane is the only other iconic hero from his time who was allowed to bleed. Show no weakness! No vulnerability! Masculine, burly men! Those good old 90s values. That's what empowered people at the time. Clearly, otherwise it wouldn't have been popular. Certain stars embody different values. Many of these actors, many of this kind of role, could not show weakness because that interfered with their star image, which was the main source of their appeal. Even John McClane only gets to bleed because Die Hard is enriching you in a character and a story, whilst Total Recall, Rambo, Commando are selling you on a dream. The hyper-masculine American dream. Yippee-ki-yay, that's called escapism, motherfucker. The superheroes are the modern day incarnation of this. It's a little bit less bro-y and a bit more diverse, but the key logic is the same. In the early days of superhero films, you know, that weird 2000s period, I like to call it the plastic era. These plastic superheroes also did not bleed. It was post 9/11, their role was to be light and inspirational. But then, over the course of the next 20 years, we'd become so dependent on them. The power fantasy is also incredibly marketable. It's the one thing that we all deep down share in common. Even the most downtrodden, unimaginative, uninspired office clerk wants to escape. America predominantly has a hero narrative. They want to fight all the bad guys. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Derek. Thanks for supporting the industry, Derek. Because in your own imagination, you can be untethered. You can be your icon of power. A superhero, a trench coat wearing badass. And everyone who ever pissed you off will have to pay. Hey, come to the movies, have your innermost desires sold back to you. Wow, that was a pessimistic reading. A power fantasy is an avatar. Many superheroes are blank slates, personality-wise. Oh yeah, they've got the wit and the charisma and the one-liners. But very rarely do any of these characters go further than their values. And that's what they're all defined by. They're vehicles of their own values. Because at some point around the turn of the millennium, superhero stories stopped being about what heroes can do and why they do what they do. Their motivations, what drives them. For Wonder Woman, it's liberty. For Superman, it's totalitarian authority. For Captain America, it's the good old-fashioned American way. Whatever that means. In short, superheroes are as big as they are because they hit a base that everyone can relate to. For some reason, personally, I come out grinning after reading or watching anything with a Loki Laufey-san character in it. For some reason, I love the trickster archetype. I'm addicted to it, even as far back as classic literature. And I know that other heroes embody different qualities, ideas, and values of what we consider to be strong or important. Because, newsflash, fiction reflects our own values and our own moral code. And in many ways, it even defines it. Why do I feel empowered by not only a secondary character, but an anti-villain? Well, let's break down the character. What does he stand for? A value of intelligence? It might tell you something about a slightly warped moral code. And, most of all, I expect to lose. Which is painfully true. There's a little bit of vengefulness in there too. But, less said about that the better. Just by analysing my pick of power fantasy for 5 seconds, you can tell a lot about me. And I think this is the case for everyone. So let's talk. Only using examples from this year, superheroes or action movies otherwise. What am I saying? John Wick is a superhero, damn it. Let's put this theory to the test. Wonder Woman. My friend, for example, was in tears watching Wonder Woman. The second Diana crosses no man's land, despite having little to no interest in superhero films or any prior knowledge of the character, she was in tears. Beautiful tears, empowered tears, and I was pretty struck by that. Don't get me wrong, I loved the scene, but due to my own contexts, it didn't hit me in the same way. That's not my power fantasy. Maybe it was the new appeal of it. Wonder Woman is a character who has criminally not been put to screen yet. I know that many people actually teared up during that moment of Wonder Woman. What a beautiful use of fiction. An inclusive use of film. Yeah, sure, it looked a little bit like the music video for Bad Blood, but what matters is that people felt represented. There was a strong, bold figure as the primary hero for once. And that struck a nerve on pop culture. Spider-Man Homecoming. Fans of Spider-Man are almost universal because his appeal is universal. It's a very young, naive notion of goodness. It's a completely selfless power fantasy, so the word almost doesn't apply. It's a selfless character driven by a very self-made narcissist character in Tony Stark. Yeah, it's easy to see how a capitalist tank Ferrari on legs can appeal to a power fantasy. I mean, that one's obvious. And as for war criminal Captain America, the renegade from the government who says, "No, you move." Well, he might just be a power fantasy for the wrong sort of crowd. More on that another time. John Wick is a power fantasy for the silent and calculating type. For the hard worker, a master of his craft. His craft? Killing people to techno music. Without saying a word, John Wick is notorious. He's known by all. He's the fucking bogeyman. The John Wick series actually has more in common with the Pantheon than any superhero film. With direct references to mythology, this can easily be interpreted as a film about modern day gods. Which makes Chapter 2 a film about the gods becoming fallible. John Wick's narrative is, well, it's a revenge narrative. I got thinking the other day, how comes you never see any female-led films about revenge narratives? There's a couple, but they're not handled like this. The idea of revenge is one that anybody can understand from any single time. It's a timeless story with misguided morality. It makes for good drama. There's a lot to unpack with this. First of all, the revenging character will always have the audience's sympathy, because first, they were the victim. And you know, it's fine if the victim becomes the villain, because we saw him as a victim first. Because of main character syndrome, what they're doing seems justifiable, at least to the audience. We've been taught to accept this kind of narrative, because this is biblical stuff. This is a biblical ancient story. Probably one of the oldest. Of course, if your wife is raped, daughter is taken, or your damn dog killed! Yes, you're going to warrant some kind of revenge. But why are men so drawn to these kind of stories to begin with? Why are we looking for an excuse to exact some revenge and kill some people with justifiable reasons? Because that's the psychology of the everyday American gun owner. Boom, got him! A guy goes from being powerless to gaining control and power over the institutions that harmed him. Bonus points if it's the mafia. I'm gonna call the first act of revenge movies, where all the nasty shit happens, suffer porn. A predominantly male audience member loves to see a male character fall to their lowest low, because it's cathartic. Because it gives them a safe space to take action, to not be walked over with no moral reprehensibility. You get to cap some motherfuckers and keep the moral high ground? Oh boy! The Punisher, Kill Bill, Alien 3, Greek mythology in general, Mad Max, True Grit, Django Unchained. These films encourage emotional vigilantism. You would be surprised how often the very nature of revenge is even seen as a bad thing. Many characters don't have to question their motives or their moral code, it's A to B. The revenge film I really do recommend is Blue Ruin. Blue Ruin on Netflix. A story of a man avenging the death of his parents? Puts it in a very different light. Here's how a revenge story would actually play out without the Hollywood antics. It's slow, it's miserable, it's awkward and pathetic, and it doesn't make a single thing better. John Wick deals with his problems the same way he deals with all of his problems, probably, with an AK-47. Hey America, why is it that all your heroes have a history of violence? Revenge narratives are fun, and very much laden in power fantasy. The ending of John Wick 2, apart from being very, very dog-centric, good boy, the film ends with John making a very poor call of judgment and ending up on the hit list of every single assassin in the world. In the first film, John Wick's hype is part of his strength. The fact that he's a walking legend is most of his power. Watch as that notoriety is turned against him. Suddenly, the boogeyman is a rare animal. Everyone knows who he is and everybody is coming for him. His rarity and his skill makes him a target. But unlike the first film, this isn't because he's been wronged. In John Wick 2, he's decomposed so much mentally, the revenge narrative has eaten away at his mind so much that he is to blame. You did this to yourself. There's a deeply troubling notion in revenge narratives like this, that men are beings of nature, of instinct, that if something is wrong to you, then you don't take that, and as a result, men can never change. It's all animal instinct. There is no way out. You have to go and do this because of forces beyond your control. The trappings of masculinity. Then let me show you revenge narratives with a female lead. 3 Billboards Outside Missouri. Kill Bill. Monster. At some point in all 3 of these movies, the revenge and the carnage stops. Our main character comes to a realization. What is the point? It's not how do I get revenge, it's how do I carry on. A lawful and healthy reaction to tragedy. Women pen so few of these kind of stories, and there's probably very good reason for that I can't go into. But all of these stories end with the main character giving up or realizing it isn't quite worth it, even after they've gone to such crazy extremes. It's not forgiveness, but it's also not cold-blooded revenge murder. Of the few female-led revenge flicks there are, almost none of them take joy in the actual revenge itself. It's all grief. Never cathartic. Revenge narratives try and take away this individual agency, as if you're suddenly not accountable for your own actions. You know, movie rules. Movie morality rules. Originally I was going to make a whole video about how great it is that our superheroes can bleed in 2017. But it's not just about vulnerability on the body, it's vulnerability in the mind. Heroes are icons. So if they're allowed to not be perfect and they're allowed to feel vulnerability, that's a great step. A hero who can take bullets, well, that's one thing. We need to see these characters at their lowest, at their mental weakest, with their full insecurities on show, so then they can then rise above it. It's such a built-in notion that boys will be boys and men will never change, and that even goes as far back as our icons of power. Even our power fantasies are dealing with these problems. Both John and Logan make very similar choices at the end of their movies. Very similar movies, in fact. And it's these decisions that decide how these characters will be remembered. Is their development stunted, or can they actually change as people? Power fantasies are fun. They're engaging, relatable. It's what escapism is for. But we don't learn from it. How can we grow as people if even our heroes don't? And we're done. Thanks for getting to the end of this very structured rant. We talked about power fantasies, revenge narratives, and toxic masculinity. How do we always end up back here? Thanks for getting to the end. In the comments, put down your favourite fictional character and what you think that might say about you. I'll be interested. Anyway, see you in the movies.